Well, hello everyone, and you join us here today to talk a little bit about diving. Now, Tom, you've got a dive watch, and I've got a dive watch. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever actually got mine wet. Have you?
Me neither. Maybe a bit of splashback when I was washing up or something, but yeah. Really putting the 300 metres to the test.
Well, that's just as well, because we have a special guest with us here today, diver, adventurer, nutter extraordinaire, Andy Talbot, and he's going to give us a bit of an idiot's guide on how we can go and do some cave diving. Andy, very, very good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing all right. And it will be an idiot's guide, because if I'm giving it. That's something worth saying, actually. Well, cave diving is a cerebral sport. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete, but it is quite a little bit of common sense, I think, rather than anything too intelligent.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to pump us full of common sense today, because I think between Tom and I, we probably don't have a huge amount of it when it comes to outdoor activities. But for our viewers and listeners who may be interested in putting their dive watch to the test, this is a really cool and fun and local sport that people can take part in. So I think first of all, what I'd like to do, Andy, is understand from you a bit more about who you are and what you do and why you're here talking to us about cave diving.
I spent quite a long time in the forces, and then when I left the forces, I got into kind of expeditions and exploration projects. And the main thing that I do climbing and skydiving and a lot of stunt work. The main thing I do is underwater stuff. So it's free diving, but it's mostly the technical stuff. So it's cave diving and very deep diving using mixed gases. I think called a rebreather, which isn't like scuba gear. It basically recycles what your breath. It's the same technology that astronauts use, and that means you can stay down longer, and go much further and go much deeper. And I use that primarily to explore. Trying to find lost shipwrecks, to try and explore unmapped underwater cave systems, or even lost flooded mine systems. I think the reason I'm on this podcast specifically is because not actually that recently, but towards the end of last year, got involved as an ambassador for Panerai.
Awesome. I hope that's working out very well for you. And Tom, this is probably your opportunity to ask about treasure.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned how it's kind of a cerebral activity, and also, there's a certain amount of courage that you need to have in order to sort of plunge the unknown. But I wondered how much the exploration, how much of the opportunity of discovery, how much of that motivates you in what you do. Does anything ever creep into your mind, like there could be something of real importance, or there could be some magic down here? How much does that motivate you to sort of overcome the dangers?
That's almost the entirety of it. That's the whole point. That's what you want to find out. I think it's human nature that we've been driven with this curiosity that we want to find out what's around the next corner, or what's over the next hill.
Sure.
What's around the next bend, or what's out in the darkness. Because often even in the open sea, it might be very light. If you look straight down, it's like 120 meters to the bottom. You can't see the bottom; it just disappears into the gloom. You want to know what that sort of that darkness is a question mark, and you never really know what you're going to find. You can hope, and a lot of time in exploration, inevitably it's maybe not as spectacular as you'd like, but that's because once in a while you find an absolute gem, and it's exciting stuff. Like just the thrill of being somewhere that where no human being has ever been before. Or dropping on. We found a shipwreck in the English Channel. We found it on a sort of side scan sonar, so we knew there was something there. Couldn't really make out what it was. It turned out to be a World War II merchant ship, but we got in the water. It's about 70 meters deep in the English Channel, and as you're in free fall down through the water column into the darkness, it's literally like just starting to tease off that first little bit of paper from the Christmas present on Christmas Day. You're like, there's definitely something there. It could be, it could be a little ISO containers, but it could be a Spanish galleon laden with gold. It could be the Goonies, but you never know that sort of mystery.
Oh, right, that's interesting, because I thought you would push that sort of stuff to the back of your mind, because you'd be like, no, it's just going to be an empty cave, or it's just going to be, a run-of-the-mill merchant navy wreck or something. But I like that, the idea that it's always just like, no, come on. Oh,
that's what you want. And most of the time we're doing cave diving stuff, you find a little bit more tunnel that looked very similar to the bit of tunnel before. But sometimes you can find these spectacular passages that are full of stalactites and look amazing, or these huge chambers, these massive cathedral-like chambers. And as well as that, my background originally was sort of academically was in zoology, so you're always looking to potentially find new species as well. I mean, it's going to be small stuff, but in these sort of places, but you never know what you're going to find. I mean, I've been 2 kilometers into a cave system, and then there was a fish just swimming around. I found frogs actually in caves like miles from the surface. You're like, how the hell did you get in here?
They were probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and even from an archaeological point of view, even I actually over lockdown I did a master's in archaeology, and I did my dissertation on cave diving in archaeology and the potential applications for in the UK. And there's been incidents where one particular one where a load of guys were cave diving, and they surfaced inside this dry cave that was only reachable by cave diving. You had to be able to, this sort of dry part, and it was full of human skulls.
Oh, goodness.
How cool is that? And what happened was there was actually a chimney, if you imagine that, a natural chimney leading from this dry chamber to the surface. And back, I think, in the Paleolithic time or Mesolithic time, people used to basically bury people, and then over the thousands of years, that tunnel, that chimney had collapsed, and then got full of dirt and completely sealed over. So from the surface, you wouldn't know it was there. And these guys surfaced in this, this chamber of bones, and there was canine bones in there too. They think there might be like sacrifices or ornamentation. There was wolf teeth and that sort of stuff. But you never know what you're going to find.
Wow.
So cave diving, it sounds absolutely fascinating. About my experience of diving probably extends to sitting on a beach and seeing some people plop off the side of a boat to explore a couple of meters underneath. Cave diving sounds like a very, very different proposition. How do you begin to prepare yourself for cave diving? So
it's an accumulation, really, of years, months, weeks, days, and hours and minutes. Depending on the nature of the cave dive, because even within cave diving, there's some pretty easy ones and there's some pretty hardcore, serious ones. Clearly, you spend years accruing the sort of skills and experience to be able to do that. And with the gaining of that skill and that experience, you build a sort of mental fortitude against the conditions you're going to face. Long hours and hours underwater, being many kilometres from the nearest exit, that sort of psychological pressures, because there's no doubt that being underwater, sometimes on your own, in the dark, in the cold, underground, is probably one of the most psychologically oppressive places you can be. And then often the days leading up to it, you're checking your equipment, because you're wholly reliant on the technology you're carrying with you. If that fails, then you're in real trouble, which is why we all carry, and you're planning. And actually, this is where paranoia counts. When I'm sitting planning, I think of all the things that can possibly go wrong, and I go, right, how can I either stop them from happening, or if I can't do that, I'm going to assume those things are going to happen. I'm going to have a plan B, C, D, E, F in my back pocket ready to go. So my rebreather that I spoke about, my primary source of sort of breathing gas, that's never failed on me, never once, but I assume it's going to fail on me every time I get in the water, and I carry redundant sort of bailout systems for that.
So for the person just getting started with it, what do you think are the cool things they need to do before they even consider going into a cave?
So obviously you need to learn to scuba dive first, on the basis of diving. Maybe do some night dives, that sort of stuff. So people penetrate inside wrecks. I mean, that's a sort of mini metal cave. And then from an instructional point of view, you take a series of graduated steps. The cavern diver course is where you go into an underwater cave, but you never go in so far that you lose sight of the entrance. So you can always see what they call the blue window. You can always see the light. And then you penetrate further and further, and then you start using things like rebreathers, things like DPVs, diver propulsion vehicles, basically scooters. If you imagine a torpedo that you can hang on to and it pulls you through the water. Because that way you can cover many, many kilometres. And then, obviously dealing with thermal issues, because even in relatively warm water, if you're underwater for 6, 7, 8 hours, you start getting cold. All the way to what we are doing recently, what we're doing in the future, which is actually camping underground, sort of underwater. So the last dive we did was a 6-hour dive, carrying a mountain of equipment all clipped to us, including a big specially made dry tube, metal dry tube, and in that dry tube was a sleeping bag and a mat and some food and that stuff. And then we were actually surfaced in this dry chamber, many kilometers from the surface, camped overnight, and then changed our gear around, carried on diving, and then and dived out. So you end up spending 2, 3, 4 days kind of underwater stroke underground.
I'm glad you clarified the surfacing part, because I was picturing you pitching a tent underwater and just sort of getting into a wet sleeping bag and the whole thing being submerged, which is obviously nonsense.
Although in a small scale you can. We've done stuff. We've actually done it at Wookie Home myself and my friend Chris, where we set up a decompression habitat. So we took through the cave diving and lots of dry chambers, which are a real pain because it's heavy. You can get it weightless underwater, but if it's a dry cave, you gotta carry it through. And then we build this. Imagine a giant upside down shopping bag, but a bag for life. Imagine a bag for life that's 1 meter wide and 2 meters long, right? Yep. So one of them upside down, and we secured it to the rocks at the bed, and then filled it full of air, full of gas, really. Which means if you've got 2 or 3 hours of decompression, you can get inside that, which means you can get out of the water. You've got to stay in your breathing gas, but you can take your mask off, you can drink, you can eat, and obviously it's a lot warmer. Even though the air temperature within that bag is the same as the water temperature, because water transfers heat 25 times better than air, it makes it effectively warmer inside the decompression habitat.
Wow. I'll say now that whole scenario is filling me full of paranoia already. And so you touched upon some of the equipment that you bring with you. What does someone just getting started need to really consider purchasing to take with them for something like this?
So it depends how you're doing it, but the first thing you need to be able to breathe. That's pretty essential. Whether that's scuba equipment or whether it's a rebreather, you need a bailout breathing system. So either more scuba gear or another rebreather, because as I say, paranoia keeps you alive. You'll need a mask because you want to see. Usually carry a spare mask because, as I say, paranoia keeps you alive. We usually wear helmets. We carry torches because, again, you need to be able to see where you're going. It's very, very dark under there. And if you need 1, you'll need 2. If you need 2, you need 3. So we never go cave diving without less than 3 torches. Mm-hmm. We carry line. Especially if we're exploring, we carry line. Effectively, it's the sort of Ariadne's thread. That's that's how you find your way back out. But because you've got line, it's very easy to get entangled underwater. So we carry various cutters. I always carry at least 3 sort of knives or cutters on me if I need to cut myself free from that line. You need some thermal protection, be it a wetsuit or a dry suit if it's really cold. And then you need your sort of computer systems. You need a way to know what depth you're at, how long you've been underwater, and if you're using a rebreather, then you need a sort of electronic handset to run that rebreather. So I always carry at least 1 or 2 computers and a watch with me whenever I go diving.
So you mentioned the watch there, obviously very topical.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a bone of contention within the community, and probably spoken about more by people who have never even set their toe in the water than otherwise. But some people would say that a mechanical watch is outdated, and a wristwatch is outdated, and everything can be done with a dive computer. You go with both, and I believe you've done so even before your relationship with Panerai. What's the benefit?
So, I mean, the dive computers are great, but the sort of things that I do, especially in very cold water or very, very long, they're run by batteries, so the batteries will eventually run out. Now, it's just fine if you're doing even 5-6 hour dive, but if you're underground and underwater for 3 or 4 days, then you start running the risk of needing to charge that. Now that's fine because if you only use it when you're diving, it's not as bad. So that tends to be what I do is that I can switch, so I can use my dive computers to dive in with my watch actually, because I like to know what time it is, because a dive computer will tend to just give you a reference point like how long you've been underwater, the dive time effectively. But I like to know when I surface, okay, right, it's at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, because I like to know. Try and keep a grasp of my biological clock, because it's very easy when you're in the darkness for 2, 3, 4 days to start losing a little bit of grasp on when you should be sleeping and when you should be eating. And then in camp, I've got my watch on the whole time, so I can kind of still operate sensibly. If I wake up at 2 in the morning, I know it's 2 a.m, so I go back to sleep. If I wake up at 6 a.m, then I get up. But you're trying to maintain those sort of natural rhythms as much as possible. And essentially, it doesn't run out of battery, ever.
So if I've learnt anything so far, paranoia, carry 10 of everything. A mechanical watch is a really good opportunity to make sure you've got something that continues functioning. It doesn't require any external forces.
And even with our rebreathers, some rebreathers are fully electric, but the ones that I tend to use and the friends that I dive with tend to use, there's the option. You can run them electrically, but you can actually run them mechanically as well. So even if you get battery failures or things run out, you can still breathe effectively. And scuba gear, again, is a bailout option. Is great because it's purely mechanical. So it doesn't matter how long it's been underwater or underground, doesn't matter how long it's been operating, doesn't matter how cold it is, it's not going to run out of batteries.
So we've had some of the preparation talk for what you do before you go to the cave. You've mentioned we a lot, talking about teams of people. You're at the cave. Who are you with? Do you need to be with them? And what are the things that you do to prepare yourself for the literal entrance of that cave?
Well, depends on the nature of the project, but more often than not these days, we effectively dive solo. Like recently went to France, there's 2 of us there, but we are carrying enough equipment to look after ourselves because in the darkness, if it's low visibility, if the visibility gets churned up, which is very easy to happen, it becomes a nil visibility environment, then your body's not going to be much use to you, so you need to basically dive independently. And I prefer that anyway because I don't want to give the responsibility for my safety to anyone else, and I don't feel that they need to carry that extra burden, that they have to look after me as well. So we tend to even dive, when we're diving as a team, dive as there are some things that we do just logistically. So last time we had a scooter, a DPV, these sort of torpedo things, 1 each, and then we carried a spare one between us, because sometimes you have, you don't want to be carrying 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spares, otherwise it becomes the point where you just physically can't drag the stuff through the water. So usually before a dive, we sort of go in our own little zones, we sort our own kit out, we test our own kit to make sure it's all working properly, even though we would have been tested the day before. But physically you then get in the water, often the hardest bit, believe it or not, because you get in there, dry suit on, rebreather, then you clip all the stuff to you. And last time I had 5 big scuba bottles to clip to me, I had a scooter and I had a dry tube. That can take quite a bit of time and effort, so by this point usually you're sweating and breathing hard. So then I'll put the rebreather in my mouth and I'll just start relaxing on the surface, just sort of basically floating in the water and breathing, get my heart rate down, get my breathing rate down, and making sure the rebreather itself is working, looking at my gas mixes, so that I'm fairly relaxed before I start the cave dive, because there's no point starting it out of breath and sweating and all sort of sort of not so much panicking, but just having just worked hard, still trying to catch your breath.
Yeah, like an acclimatization period, effectively.
Yeah. And it's little things to make sure you can reach all your bits and pieces with your gloves on, your big dry suit, make sure that works. You don't want to be halfway through the cave and go, oh, I clipped that thing in the wrong place and now I can't reach it. So you do all those checks at the surface.
So you're in the water. That is literally the beginning. You are going to go down, you're going to go across, you're going to go into a cave. You shared some footage with me, which people will be able to see as we're talking. And one word struck me immediately with all of this. Disorientating. It looks so disorientating. How do you go deeper and longer into a cave and keep your wits about you, keep yourself doing what you need to do?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, first thing is you lay a line, as I said. So that's your sort of first point of orientation. I mean, if you dive a lot, even in nil vis, you kind of got a feeling for which way up is, because gravity still works underwater. If you breathe out, your bubbles still go up. It can definitely be disorientating if there's nil vis. So you can drop to the floor. Or find a wall, put your hand on the wall, put your hand on the floor. But once you get that point of contact, that tells you if you are moving up, down, right or left, because your hand is physically touching something. So that's often what we'll do. But once you're in the cave and you are, if you can see if the visibility is good, then it's just like flying. It's no different to that. You are zooming along, and actually it's probably easier to orientate yourself than it would be if you were, say, flying an aircraft. Because you're flying an aircraft, you've only got effectively a reference point but beneath you if everything else is blue, whereas in a cave, in a tunnel, I've got sort of hard reference point, a physical environment, 360 degrees. And I find that first part is lovely, because having humped all this heavy dive kit down to the dive site and then got it all on my back and get it all clipped up to me, it's all just, as soon as you leave the surface and you become weightless and everything just starts to sort of, this clip to you becomes weightless, it's a lot less effort to dive than it is to get ready for a dive, to be honest.
It sounds like, and from my own feelings of what you're talking about and how I'm mentally reacting, that as much as the physical stamina, which sounds like it's not too much of an issue, the mental stamina is a really big part to play in cave diving, especially for a longer trip. How do you condition yourself and how do you look after yourself when you're doing a dive, when you're in a situation that could be filled with, as you keep mentioning, paranoia?
Yeah, I think the paranoia and fear can very much be curbed by the preparation. The old motto of the Army parachute school was knowledge dispels fear. If you actually understand how a parachute works, the parachute systems and all that stuff, and we spent a week in realising the statistics and actually how safe these things are, when you finally come to jump out of the plane, it won't be as scary. So much like cave diving, if you understand what you're doing and how things work, then you don't. In fact, frankly, if you're starting a cave dive scared, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Simple as that. That said, there is a level of kind of, as I said, psychological oppressiveness. There's a level of psychological pressure on you when you are underground for hours and hours, or underwater for hours and hours in a cave. And I think the trick really is to do the job that's in front of you and not let your mind spiral to the bigger picture. I was asked once after a talk that someone said, how do you cope with the idea that you are 3 hours swim from the nearest exit and you're 100 meters deep and there's 300 meters of rock above your head and you're on your own? I'm like, well, I don't allow myself to think about that. I just do the job in front of me. You just swim the next meter. Don't start thinking the fact the entrance is 3 or 4 kilometers behind you, because I think you start spiraling out of control then. And if you do start to get a little bit anxious, you need to check it straight away, because it is exponential. That the longer you leave it, the harder it is to rein yourself back in.
And how would you do that? Is it some bit of Zen breathing?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, yeah, it's Zen breathing, but the reality of it is it's just usually me giving myself a stern talking to. I think it's like that ex squad, I've had an incident once where I got a little bit lost, and I was trying to find this exit, and I'm like, okay, this isn't good, right? And you start to go, okay, and then we'll stop. And actually I did stop. I just hung in the water, stopped swimming. I was like, right, what's the reality of the situation? Yes, I'm lost. Okay, however, I've already found a little dry chamber, a tiny one, but big enough for me to get out, which meant I could change my rebreather around to what I needed to get back out. I was like, okay, so I'm first thing is, I'm not going to die. This is bad, but I'm not going to die. Okay, cool. In that case, calm down, get a grip. There's a lot of that. I think you need to be practical. And certainly for me, it's a case of just stop, take a breathe, think through the situation, work out a solution, and then crack on.
It sounds like cave diving could be quite a good training platform for just your whole mental condition for life generally. You go down there, you're in a situation, you have to face it and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, I've said before that cave diving is binary. When climbing or skydiving, you can twist an ankle, break a leg, break your back, be in a coma, die. There's a sort of graduation of how things can go for you. In cave, no one gets injured cave diving. It either goes well and you get out alive, it goes badly, but you do something about it and you get out alive, or it goes badly and you don't do enough about it and you don't get out alive, frankly.
Do you find, to move away from perhaps a slightly grim topic,
that said, it's an incredibly safe thing to do a weekend. It is incredibly safe. It's like driving, Or crossing the road. Is crossing the road dangerous? Well, for a 2-year-old, yeah, it is. But for an adult who's got any common sense, no, it's not. So it's not cave dive. Cave diving isn't dangerous, safe. It's how we do it that makes it dangerous or safe.
Yeah.
Right.
And it sounds like from what you're saying, the more preparation you do, the more redundancy you have, the less chance there is of that danger ever occurring.
Correct.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been an idiot's guide to cave diving as told by a fantastic and very entertaining expert. Thank you so much, Andy. I would love to have you on again to talk in more detail about this stuff. It seems like we've barely touched the surface. So, dear viewer and listener, if you would like to see more of this kind of stuff, the exploration, the use of watches where they're supposed to be used, do let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, brilliant. Truly fascinating.
Thank you.
And yeah, we hope to see you again with us very soon. Enjoy your next trip, and we'll speak to you after then. Bye bye.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye now.